So I think it's fair to say that Amir Khan's at the end of his career at this moment in time, and obviously if you look at Ricky Hatton's retired for several years now. He is talking about making a comeback for an exhibition bout, I believe, but for all intended purposes, he is retired at this point in his career. So in my opinion, I think it's good. It might be a good time to actually compare both of their careers. If you look at it from the perspective of their resume, if you look at, I feel like Amir Khan, you can make a case that he's actually got a better resume than Ricky Hatton does, in terms of just what he's accomplished in his career. If you just look at Amir Khan's actual resume, who he's actually fought when he was coming up at 140, if you just look at his resume, let's see who he fought. Let's see who he fought at 140. At 140, he managed to pick up two belts. He fought Kotelnik Solito, who at the time was undefeated. I know everyone looks at him like he's a joke now, but he was an undefeated champion. He fought Barrero as well. He fought Malignaggi, he fought Maidana, he fought McCloskey, he fought Judah, he fought Lamont Peterson, and he fought Garcia, he fought Molina. Then he went up to welterweight and he fought, I think he fought Julio Diaz, right? Collazo. He gave a breakout performance against Alexander. He fought Algieri. And then in terms of middleweight, he fought Alvarez. And then obviously his last fight, I think, was against Crawford. He fought Crawford. And from rumours I've been hearing, he might be fighting Brook next. So in terms of that resume, you can't deny it. That's a very good resume in terms of what he's actually accomplished in his actual career. That's an incredible resume. But if you actually look at Ricky Hatton in his career, obviously he had a very varied run, right? Obviously when he was coming up, he was fighting the likes of all these top fighters, and he was fighting Tony Pep, who was obviously a good contender, and then he went in there against Vince Philip. He beat him. Ben Taki, he beat him. Ray Oliveira, and then his first major win was against Costa Tszyu. Now Costa Tszyu at the time was a top 3 pound for pound type fighter. He was actually legitimately one of them fighters that was seen as one of the greatest 140 fighters of all time, and still to some extent he's seen as that now. At the time, I think he had the IBF and the ring light welterweight title, and then after that he fought Luis Collazo, which is a common opponent to Amir Khan by any stretch, Juan Rarango, and then he fought Jose Luis Castillo, which he knocked out in the 4th round. Then he had a fight against Floyd Mayweather, which he lost. And then obviously he fought Juan Lascano, and then he fought Paulie Malignaggi, who he beat. That was his last win of his career. Then he fought Manny Pacquiao, who obviously destroyed him, and he fought Shevchenko in his last fight, who actually knocked him out with, ironically, a body shot, which was one of his signature punches when he was in his prime. So if you look at both of their resumes, both of them have had incredible resumes. I feel like in terms of like the names on their resume, I think Ricky Hatton definitely has the more substantial names when you talk about single wins. So his single win against Costa Tszyu, who at the time was a top 3 pound for pound fighter, everyone at the time was absolutely terrified of this guy. He was seen as like one of the most dominant fighters of his weight class, and basically Ricky Hatton completely dominated him and made him retire on his stool. And then on top of that, obviously his losses, he fought Floyd Mayweather, who at the time I think was the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world. This was after he beat Oscar De La Hoya. And he fought Manny Pacquiao, who at the time was again probably number 1 pound for pound in the world. And that was at a time when Pacquiao, obviously Floyd Mayweather was retired and Manny Pacquiao was going through his tear. I think it was the start of his tear, because he beat Oscar De La Hoya. He beat he beat Eric Morales, and then he beat David Diaz, and then he beat Oscar De La Hoya, and that's when he fought Hatton. And then after he beat Hatton, he fought several other good fighters like the Margaritos, the Miguel Cottos, the Joshua Clotties, obviously Timothy Bradley, all these other good fighters that he fought them, and he actually managed to actually beat them to some extent. So obviously if you're looking at in terms of length of resume, so what I mean by that, who had the most impressive names on their resume, like in terms of numbers, I think you have to give it to Amir Khan. Amir Khan had an incredible resume, but in terms of actual, like, who had the most significant names, I think you have to give it to Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton, obviously, Costa Zoo, Floyd Mayweather. Costa Zoo was a top 3 pound for pound guy at the time. Floyd Mayweather, who's number 1 pound for pound at the time. Manny Pacquiao, who's number 1 pound for pound at the time. In terms of like the depth of the name, you have to give it to Ricky Hatton. But in terms of the actual, like in terms of how the number of good fighters they've actually fought, I think you have to give it to Amir Khan. So it's not a cut and dry, easy thing to actually say. Who's actually the actual, who actually has the better resume? But I think that's the best way to put it. I think in terms of depth of resume, like in terms of fighting as many world class top fighters as possible, you have to give it to Amir Khan. But in terms of like the single win and also fighting the best fighters, you have to give it to Ricky Hatton. Because if you think about it, Amir Khan, the 2 fights that he's chased his whole career, that have eluded him, that he wanted his whole career, was a fight against Manny Pacquiao and a fight against Floyd Mayweather. Now Ricky Hatton managed to fight both of them. Whatever you think about him, Ricky Hatton did manage to fight both of them when they were at their peak as well. And Amir Khan never managed to do that. Don't get it twisted. He still had great names on his resume. For example, Canelo. Canelo was a great name that he fought. Also, Terence Crawford. Both of them are seen as top 3 pound for pound fighters. But I feel like when Amir Khan fought Canelo, Canelo was this sport was before Canelo went on his absolute tear, before he fought Golovkin. So I don't think Canelo at the time, he was definitely on the pound for pound list, but I don't think he was a top 10 pound for pound fighter. Whereas when Ricky Hatton fought Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, and also Costa Zoo, they were around the top 3 to top 1 pound for pound ratio. They were seen as that good, and that's when he fought them. So in terms of like the better names, in terms of like fighting 1 or 2 or 3 opponents, like the top names, you got to give it to Ricky Hatton. But in terms of Amir Khan, I think he's fought more breadth of names, so he's fought more world-class operators than Ricky Hatton did, but Ricky Hatton fought the better fighters, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's my opinion on all of this. Tell me your opinion, and basically just tell me what you think. Who do you think's had a better career between both of them? Do you think it was Amir Khan? Do you think it was Ricky Hatton? Who do you think actually had the better career in terms of their resume? I think it's you can make an argument either way, but I think that's the best thing that I can actually come up with. So yeah, that's my opinion, and tell me your opinion, and tell me who you think actually had a better resume and better career and all of that. And like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Peace out.